Hi and welcome back. Today's episode is about data imputing made easy with R. We will discuss how to fill missing and null values using R for group data. That means we're going to fill our missing values given certain groups. In previous episodes, we have discussed how to impute missing values for numerical variables. Today, we're going to combine categorical variables with numerical variables. Let's talk about this using R now. In this episode, we're going to discuss about data imputing made easy with R. We're going to group our data in order to fill our missing values, and we're going to understand how to follow certain steps in order to make this. First, we have to import our data. Then we have to inspect our data and to detect if we have missing values. Next step is imputation. How we're going to do this? Do I have to impute my missing values by the mean with the mod, with the median? Do I have to group my data before imputing? Is it better or not? This is what we're going to discuss now using R. For this episode, we have to use the library dplyr. This library is coming from the tidyverse world. This one allows us to have a very easy data manipulation. That's why we're going to choose to use it. Check here that we already have certain groups and certain values, but we have to create a data frame. I'm going to create a data frame combining this information, my groups, and we're going to say my values too. Then once we have combined this, we can check that we have a data frame with two different marker groups. Can you see here? We have the group A and the group B. Then if we know that these values here are grouped, it is better for my decision, of course, to miss this information here or this missing value by grouping. Why? Because I understand my data. That's the first step. Remember, we already import or we create our data. Next, we detect our missing values. In this case, it's easy to understand that we have na because I can see it here and I understand that R is going to mark it in this way. However, if you have a data frame, you have to inspect it by viewing and R will show you this information here. What about instead of na, we have other symbol, a null value, for example. Then the first thing we have to do is to clean our data. That's the first thing to do. And then once we have changed or replaced those null values by missing values, and then we can continue next. Now, we're going to use this library dplyr because it allows us to have an easy manipulation of our data. Then we have to say df check that we're going to use the pipelines, that's here, and they're going to say group by, because I know that I have to group my data based in my variable, my groups. So I say, okay, my groups is coming, you see, and what is R doing here? Check here that R is telling me has created a table and it has two groups based in this variable. So we continue here with my pipeline and we'll say, okay, I want you to mutate this data. Which variable? Well, we're going to say my values equal, and then we're going to say my values because I want you to change it here. But remember that it has grouped the information given the group by this variable. So when it takes my values, it's going to come only for these values and these values in each section. Okay? Now here we can do two different things. We can come and use, as in the past, if else, check here, and we're going to test. Is na, who is na? Well, of course, my variable values. Remember that this one is going to replace this one over here, okay? So that is the same name, but we're going to overlap it, of course. Is na, and we're going to say, okay, if this information here is na, we want to replace it by the mean, if it's the case, mean of who? Okay, if it's me, we're going to say my values. However, because in our group there are missing values, and we have learned that when we have mean, we have to add other option. Which other option? We have to say na.rm equal true. That means we're going to trim those missing values. And if it's not the case, what we're going to do, I'm going to move this a little bit so we're going to read better. And here, I'm going to say the part that is false for if else. Well, if this one is false, just copy the value, okay? That means that if it finds a missing value, like this one over here, it's going to replace that information with the mean we have for all my grouped data. And if not, just going to copy it back. And let's check here. There you go. As you can see, we have replaced the missing values for P and A. This is the first method. And the second, just gonna copy here, check this. There is a very interesting function here that we're gonna apply is replace na. However, this function, it is not found in dplyr. So we're gonna use tidyverse and we're gonna say, you will see, replace na. And we're gonna say which data. Well, the data I want to replace is already working here and replace what we're gonna replace. Okay, that's what we're gonna do now. Replace now, and the parenthesis we're gonna say. And as before, we're gonna say, okay, I wanted to replace my values. That's what we're gonna do. And we're gonna say my option is that you're gonna replace it by using my values. However, it's the same than the other option now, because we have the mean. And here we say, okay, now true, ready, and there you go. And here we can see that we have changed our missing values using two functions, replace now or the option if else. And if you don't want to use the mean, of course, you can use median, or you can say certain value as you want to. It could be a different value, of course, or you can even create your own function over here. Now, let's move to our second example. Now we have a second example here. Check that I have another column with missing values too. And we're going to create a new data frame, but in this case, by inspection, so you can come here, of course. And by inspection, I can understand that I have missing values in both columns. And as before, we have our data grouped. We're using this column, my groups, and you can see it here. And following the previous example, we're going to use my groups and we're going to say my groups. And we're going to say group by. I'm going to say use my groups. And you can see that we're going to have my information. Of course, I have an error. Here is my df. Sorry, here. And my df already got it here. And we already have grouped our data. Now, next, what is the difference before? Well, the difference with before, I'm just going to copy this. That was the easier. We're going to copy this. But what's the problem with this? Well, in this case, I only have one single column, my values here. Then it's going to change only one column. For example, check here that the name is 1. So if I should have to add number 1 here and here. But this one only works for one single column for a data frame with two different columns with missing values. So how we can automate this directly? Well, we're going to say something interesting. Mutate, you see, I'm going to leave it here. This one, I'm going to leave it here too. And we'll continue using the mean, okay? I will continue using the mean. Instead of using like that, instead of using here, I'm going to say across, check here, across, and I'm going to add this information here, okay? This one, and this parenthesis for mutate. And I come here, I say across what? Well, I want across everything. Everything, across everything. That means that it's gonna do this for all the columns. And we put a comma here and replace. However, there are certain empty information here. What are we going to do? Because you see, I cannot say my value is 1 or my value is 2 because it's not gonna be in general. So we're gonna do, in this case, we'll say it's a dot x and here dot x. Why do we use this? Because we're saying that in general, when it goes all around everything, x will take the name of each variable, my values, my values. Select x is it works, and there you go. You can compare calculating all this, and if you want to make this change directly, so you say like this. Okay, remember all the time to put this if you want to make the change visible in your variable, and then we go, and we continue here. You can compare that we have changed our missing values by grouping our data frames with this column. If you have more than one column that you don't want to use, remember that you can use select in that case, okay? And select, and you can just change for given those columns, you can change whether could be here or here. And for example, you say column 1, 2, and 3, and here 1, 2, and 3. If you don't want to change certain columns that you don't want to use, or if there are columns with other groups that you cannot or you don't have to use across everything. That's an important tip.